Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Hit the bell, subscribe. We have new content coming out daily. Make sure you subscribe. God bless you guys. Darren, one of your focuses at revolver.news has been telling the truth about January 6th. You guys could check it out at revolver.news. And can we just kind of give a macro update, Darren? I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, oh, come on, Charlie, are they really going to arrest people that didn't get into the Capitol? They have. So Darren, can you just talk about this ring theory that, they obviously started with out of the gate the indictments of people that were inside the Capitol that were vandalizing or assaulting police officers. But we are now getting at people that were just looking at the events, that were outside of the Capitol. There are 1,200 arrests. They don't seem to be slowing down. They just went after Nathan Hughes in Arkansas as if he was El Chapo. Darren, walk us through the latest on this.
Well, I mean, to take probably the most egregious example, the biggest sentencing yet for J6 defendants was Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, who I don't even think was in D.C. during January 6th.
Correct.
In fact, he was arrested the day before under very bizarre circumstances, frankly, but that's another story. So he wasn't even in D.C., and yet he gets the biggest sentence, which is 22 years. And then you have more minor figures like Owen Schroyer of InfoWars, who I think they're trying to put him in jail for 120 days, something like that. But again, he was simply trespassing. And this gets to the multiple issues that we've been covering. One is that because you had these critical individuals that we've sort of covered who haven't been indicted and so forth, who were methodically cutting down fencing indicating that the area was restricted. They were cutting down that fencing in advance of the bigger crowd going over to the Capitol. There were so many people, hundreds, actually thousands of people, who unwittingly walked into this legal booby trap where they were technically trespassing, but it's totally under the government's discretion as to whether they want to charge them. And all of the charges that I've seen so far regarding trespassing as such have been very, very conspicuously politically motivated, even, compared to the generally politically motivated context of January 6th prosecutions. So that's kind of a remarkable thing. Of course, it's interesting because originally a lot of the regime media was saying about Ray Epps that, oh, he didn't go into the Capitol, so of course there's nothing we could charge him with. But that's simply not true. They could have charged him with trespassing easily like they did anyone else, and more seriously based on a documented exchange he had with one of these Proud Boys guys, basically anticipating going into the Capitol, saying when we go in, so forth. They could have hit him with a conspiracy charge just the same way that they've done with others. And so that's another kind of fascinating and frankly damning dimension of this. Not only, they're going after all these people for trespassing charges, but that kind of puts to lie the excuse that, they couldn't go after Epps for some charge because they're going after these other people who haven't gone into the Capitol. And in the case of both Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers and Enrique Tarrio, as I mentioned, the Proud Boys, two of the biggest sentences in January 6th, neither of those two went into the Capitol.
With Enrique Tarrio not present, no weapons, 22 years in federal prison. Contrast that, Darren, with multiple cities that are paying cash to BLM rioters as apologies, as reparations to the BLM cohort. Talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's simply amazing, and it speaks for itself in terms of not only the disproportionate nature of the sentencing, but really the obscenely political nature of this that gets to the underlying rot of our justice system that, allows for everything that we've been seeing. Like, this is the issue right now. It's not, there's the censorship issue was relevant before, and, there have been other issues before. The issue right now is the total weaponization of the justice system as such. That's really the most meaningful story going on now, because it has so many different dimensions. It covers the Trump thing, it covers January 6th thing, it covers in some ways, what's going on with some of the impeachments that we're seeing. So it's really the number one issue, and unless we have a fix for that, it's just going to be more of the same, unfortunately.
What fixes do you potentially recommend, Darren, or things that we could do to actually fight fire with fire?
Well, it's a great question. I don't think there's any easy fix. Well, just going back to the 22-year sentence, like you mentioned, the BLMs, but I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult to find instances of actual murders getting less than 22 years. I think now I've got the idea for the next Revolver piece. I want to see what kind of heinous crimes have resulted in less than a 22-year sentence, which Tario got, who didn't even go into the Capitol and did nothing violent. But that's for another segment. But it is, really just underscores how outrageous it is. As for what the fix is, I mean, we've spoken about this before. We need a tit for tat. We need to figure out, where is our Fulton County? Where is our Southern District, Eastern District of New York? Where is our prosecution factory, and why aren't we using it? That's the first step.
Yep. And I'll be honest, Darren, it's because our side is weak. They're feckless. When I challenge them, if I was on a phone with an AG and I was just like, hey, how are things going? Oh, we're doing great. We're suing the Biden administration. I was just curious, do you plan to ever criminally look into Democrats? Oh, no, we're not going to stoop to the level of the Democrats. That's what they tell me.
Stoop to the level of winning and controlling every institution in the country. Imagine that. We're not going to stoop to the level of the people who control every institution of the country. We're gonna remain on high on our perch of just perennial losers. And speaking of which, you mentioned AG. And this is totally in keeping with the problem that we're talking about, is one of the most effective, if not the most effective, AGs, Paxton, right? Look what's happening to him in Texas.
But the show trial is intentional. They did that to isolate him, to say, if you dare speak out. Let's play Cut 118. Rachel Maddow lookalike talking about how RICO is a double-edged sword. Play Cut 118.
Ever since Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis brought a racketeering indictment against Donald Trump and his co-defendants, we've talked a lot about Georgia's particularly expansive version of that RICO law. It creates real legal peril for the ex-president and his co-conspirators, and it seems to be an appropriate tool to use against the transgression of their illegitimate and fundamentally unlawful project to overturn the election. The very breadth of that law can be a real double-edged sword, as people in Georgia, particularly defense attorneys, will be among the first to tell you. We got an example of that yesterday, when the very same grand jury that indicted Donald Trump also indicted 61 community activists and others, many of whom were attempting to stop the construction of a new police training facility.
Community activists, these people forcibly and violently attacked a construction site. And Chris Hayes, guess what, Chris? You're going to have to be doing a lot more spin. Because once we get our way and we remove these weak-kneed Vichy French Republican AGs one by one, and I'm going to start naming their names, one by one. Steve Marshall in Alabama, I've asked him, I said, hey, where are the indictments? Why are you not looking into SPLC? Oh, we don't do that. We don't do that. All right, well, when you run for governor, don't call me. These guys, they're really nice until you got to do something. Eventually, RICO will be used against the Democrat Party. The RICO will be used against the Democrat Party.